So we will start our Minamata Online afternoon session now. We see that our audience is more or less shifting more westwards, and so thank you very much for all of you joining us today. This is the second session we're doing today on this particular topic. My name is Claudia. I'm the Senior Policy and Coordination Officer of the Secretariat. And it's my great pleasure to be joined today by two excellent speakers and panelists that I'm sure you can see on your screens already as well. Let me just first introduce what we are trying to do with Minamata Online. Many of you, I can see by their names, have joined us for at least a session or two already, and so you know that Minamata Online is our response as a Secretariat to this most unusual and also difficult year for many, that has interrupted workflows and meetings and so on, where officials couldn't meet or couldn't travel or couldn't be. And we as Secretariat also found that we had to find new ways of interacting with parties and stakeholders and to try and make the best of this situation. And so have launched Minamata Online. Officially, the season started in September. This is our first season, and it will run until next month. We also had some trials in June, and Minamata Online sessions are basically run according to three streams. One of them is COP4 preparation, so that could be intersessional work and other. One of them is this stream of work. It's the stream of work I lead in the Secretariat, namely implementation, review, and support. And then there's also a stream led by my colleague Eisaku Toda, which is the one on Mercury science. So they are very closely related, but try to look at Minamata and Mercury always from a slightly different perspective, bringing together different audiences around different focus areas. We've had, this is in fact the last one in the stream on implementation, review, and support, and we have made our way through many, but not all of the articles that we have in our convention and are now in Article 12, Contaminated Sites. Before I jump in, just to say that this is probably the area where we don't yet have that many materials from the Secretariat perspective of assisting countries in their capacity building and other technical assistance in this regard. But that comes also in many ways because it was only at the most recent COP that the guidance was agreed after many years of good work and good interactions, of course, that had started already before the convention began its life in INC times. I recall that very well, of course. But it's very nice to now have this guidance in place that was adopted by the COP. And so we are very happy to go a little bit into that. As you can see on the screen and also on the slide, Eisaku and I are joined today by a very special guest. So I would just like to very formally and happily introduce you and welcome you, Dr. Rocío Millán, who comes from Spain, CIEMAT, which is of course a public research institution linked to the Ministry of Science and Innovation. And we're really happy to have you with us this afternoon. We also had you in the morning to give also a perspective in terms of really what all of our, what it means on the ground to really be dealing with contaminated sites or to plan how to deal with sites that could be contaminated. And going forward, I'm quite certain you will enjoy her presentation. With that, let me just give a very, very brief overview of today's session. So the next slide gives that. I will make the briefest of introductions on how Minamata was, of course, put together as a convention that addresses the entire life cycle of Mercury. Then Eisaku Toda will speak to the provisions in the convention, in other words, the Article 12 provisions, and also introduce to you, although there may well be many more experts on the line if I look at the names already, but the guidance that was passed on the management of contaminated sites. And then we will dive into some case studies, which I'm very pleased about. And of course, we would like to also keep some time for questions and answers. Please feel free to use the chat box if a question comes up as you listen to any of us, to already put it there or at the conclusion. And just to say, this event is recorded and will be available afterwards for your review if you'd like to look at it again. And also all of our PowerPoints will be available to you. And of course, any follow-up questions that you might have that we might not get to in this session. But with that, Let me jump in to the next slide. And just to, in two extremely brief slides, just outline that, of course, the drafters of the convention really wanted to look at the entire logic of how Mercury is in our environment and how Mercury is in our society and how we go about all of those steps. So this slide, which many of you might have seen already in various of our other different meetings, looks at or shows that the first articles in our convention are the so-called control measures in terms of trying to keep as much, colloquially speaking, of mercury just in the ground, keep it there, but also to reduce the use, the need and presence of mercury in the economy, the industry, and in society. I have a disruption here, so let me just switch that off. Sorry about that. Just looking at the control measures, you will see that Article 12 is the very last one, and that really shows you that this is at the tail end of what we go to when we look at the entire life cycle of mercury. And of course, it is very, very closely related to the fact that the first article speaks to the objective of the convention, which is to reduce the harm of mercury to both the environment and to human health. And so in gold, you will see the so-called articles that are pivoted to work at reducing mercury to the environment. Article 8 and 9 are the ones that most directly speak to this, but we've also put Article 7 here because, of course, this article is not only looking at the use of mercury in a process that is used very much, but also is designed to especially look at the reduction of emissions to the environment and also, of course, to the miners and the societies around that. Just very quickly on the right-hand side are the enabling and supportive other articles that are as important as the control articles. They go hand in hand. And just for today's session, just want to highlight Article 17 because much of the work by parties and all those that want to make a difference on mercury necessitates good information exchange. And so this session is also geared towards, as Secretariat, helping you as parties and other stakeholders exchange as much information as possible and as you see relevant towards your meeting of the obligations. So with that, I will show one slide that I don't have to explain to this audience, but that we include here because it is just one of those very easy slides to understand why we have to worry about contaminated sites and that they can come in many different shapes and sizes. They can be industrial, they can be ASGM, they can simply be waste sites, they can be all kinds of different sites. But I leave that for the following presentations to go into much more detail. The reason why we include it here is also that this is not supposed to only be a session for experts on contaminated sites, but it's really also to spread the message to those that are maybe not working on this particular article, but on others, just to really understand the work that this particular article entails. With that, let me hand over to Eisaku to take us through the next set of slides, and those are for the provision of the convention. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Claudia. So I'm happy to introduce the Article 12 of the convention and also the associated technical guidance. We did this, as Claudia said, this is the last one of the implementation review and support series. And in the past, we spent a bit of time to explain the articles on trade, emissions, and mercury products and waste. But this one is very simple. The obligation of the parties described in the paragraph 1 is to endeavor to develop appropriate strategies for identifying and assessing sites contaminated by mercury. And it goes on to say, if you take any action to reduce the risks posed by such site, such action must be performed in an environmentally sound manner. And it also encourages parties to cooperate in developing strategies and implementing activities for identifying, assessing, prioritizing, managing, and as appropriate remediating contaminated sites. So the Secretariat works to facilitate such cooperation. Next slide, please. And paragraph 3 of the convention requests the conference of the parties to adopt guidance on managing contaminated sites, covering the matters listed from A to F. I will come back to this later. So I will jump into the next slide, which is about the guidance that was adopted by COP3 in 2019. And if we move to the next one. So the COP adopted decision called MC3/6, in which the firstly, COP adopted the guidance, and then it noted the importance of capacity building and technical assistance, and these will be done under Articles 13 and 14, as explained by Claudia earlier. And it encourages the parties to take the guidance into account in managing the contaminated sites. So this guidance document is not a legally binding document. It does not place any obligations nor affect the rights and duties of anybody. It requests the Secretariat to collect and disseminate information. And this information session is part of such efforts. It is both for providing you the information and also collecting relevant information from you that will help support the parties to implement this provision, the Article 12. And it notes that the guidance may be revised in the future. Next slide, please. So this is the guidance document that was adopted at COP3, and it is available in 6 UN languages. In the middle screen is the web page called Forms and Guidance, and if you toggle between the language tab, you can go to Chinese side, and you can go to Russian and so on, and you can download the guidance document. If I may briefly explain the history of the guidance document, as Claudia said, the work started even before the COP1 in 2017, and the Secretary presented a rough document to COP1, and COP1 decided to develop this guidance and agreed on its outline and requested the parties and other stakeholders to nominate experts to work on the draft. And the draft was submitted to COP2 in 2018, and COP requested the Secretariat and experts to work further on the draft. Revised draft was submitted to COP3, and COP adopted it, and after word-by-word discussion in a small group. So I see many names of experts who contributed to drafting and negotiation of the text, and we are very much grateful for your great efforts. On the right-hand side, you see the structure of the guidance document, and I'm reminding you about the convention, the convention Article 12 that requests the that requires the guidance to cover 6 items. The section B is about the site identification and characterization. Section C is about engaging the public, and it is not described as a consecutive item in the process. It discovers the whole process, starting with the identification of sites to the management and validation. The section D is about human health and environmental risk assessment. Section E is about managing the options for managing risks posed by contaminated sites. Section F is about evaluation and benefits and costs, and section G is about validation of outcomes. Next slide, please. So after this slide, I just copied and pasted some key descriptions of the guidance document that may be useful for you to understand. And I would like to explain a little bit of the background of the text of the guidance document. Firstly, I will start with the site identification, which is the first one of the parties' obligations. The approach mentioned on the first row of this box is the review of historical and current land use, look into possible uses, including these potential sources. And this can be described as something like a top-down approach, perhaps starting with the national survey of potential, suspected, and confirmed contaminated sites. And this is also described as systematic approach. Here, you see the list of the potential sources, and I'm going to try the polling of about what you are interested in addressing or learning about. And I think I opened the poll now, and I think you see the question, what are you interested in? And there are a number of choices. I think you can select multiple items. I think I did it right. So, okay, so now I will continue. This poll is open for 5 minutes, so please try to complete it while listening to my explanation. So, and I'm going to the bottom of that box, site identification, which says contaminated sites may also be identified when land use changes or actions such as excavation and construction take place. And this could be described as a bottom-up approach, case by case. You identify sites when needs arises. And the earlier draft described this as a kind of either or question, but experts agree that this is really a supplementary or mutually supportive process. So we decided to describe these really different approaches. The next step is inventory development, and it is always useful to have a systematic record of the sites identified as potential or suspected or confirmed contaminated sites, and it describes it provides an example of the classification or categorization of contaminated sites in the national inventory, and this is by no means a prescriptive description. This is just an example that you can take into account. And one example classifies sites into contaminated sites, remediation required, contaminated, restricted use, and so on. And the next step is the site characterization. And also this discusses a concept called conceptual site model, CSM. And in the discussion, in the expert discussion as well, some experts said that yes, this is a very good idea, but and we do this, but we don't call this a CSM. But we do not. This is not a prescription or definition of CSM or whatever, but this is this presents a reasonable way to characterize sites. and of course, and the guidance provides some technical information about the sampling and analysis of soil, sediment, groundwater, air biota, and so on. Moving to the next slide. Next slide is about the public, engaging public or public involvement. And as I said earlier, this is not a consecutive item of the process, but this covers the whole process. It is important to have a two-way communication. The stakeholders should be informed and their views should be considered in the decision-making process. In the third part, it's continues to explain that the process may begin with providing information, but it doesn't stop there. It proceeds to the two-way process of transmitting and receiving information. And different tools may be used, such as the public meetings or establishment community consultation committee. Moving to the next slide is about the options for, this is a human health and environmental risk assessment, and such assessment can support responding the questions such as does the site present a risk, or what is the magnitude of the risk, or can the site risk be adequately managed, or could the risk increase or spread? For such assessment, the general feature of the risk assessment, starting with the scoping and hazard identification, hazard assessment, and exposure assessment and risk analysis. Next slide, please. Next slide describes the options for the management of contaminated sites. And the first item that this section describes is site management. And there's a discussion, what do you mean by site management? Because this document, the whole document is about the management of the contaminated site. Article 12 is the management of contaminated site, and it includes the whole process from identification to the management, remediation, and the validation. But here we use this word site management in a narrower sense, which means actions taken to reduce exposure of humans and the environment to the mercury. So the measures include the use restriction, or addressing the water contamination, and so on. And then it goes on to provide options for site remediation that may start with the on-site containment of the contamination, and then normally the soil are treated on site, but in some cases the contamination may be so heavy that they may need to be transported and treated off-site. But of course, this is quite an intensive process because the removed soil needs to be disposed of as waste, sometimes mercury waste, if it exceeds the threshold set pursuant to Article 11. Next slide is about describes the special consideration for ASGM and there are complexities around ASGM site. Firstly, because very often the ASGM activities are ongoing there, and if you address the contaminated sites, another contamination will may occur if the bad practice in using mercury is continuing, and also because of the informal nature of this of HCM activities, there may be challenges in the managing the contaminated sites in an environmentally sound manner. So what the guidance document emphasizes is that firstly, reducing or eliminating the use of mercury in HCM is the preferred approach, and you have to address the source rather than trying to address the contaminated sites after the contamination happens. And also, the holistic approach with community support is needed under the framework of National Action Plan pursuant to the Article 7 of the Convention. Next slide, please. This is about the evaluation of benefits and cost, and the guidance document discussed the methods for cost benefits analysis, and also there are considerations on the financing of contaminated sites management and remediation. It is clear that we should follow the polluter pays principle. So primarily those who pollute or contaminate the site will need to pay for the management and remediation. But the challenges, of course, when the polluters are not known, or when polluters cannot afford to pay for such action. So these in EU model, these sites are called orphan sites, and there are different national provisions to address these challenges. The parties submitted quite good information on their national arrangements, and these were compiled in the information document for COP3. Next slide, please. So, so I think this is an overview of the guidance document. And before turning to Rocío, I like to speak a little bit about case studies that are available in the information document that was submitted to COP3. The next slide is about the definitions or glossary of terms, and in the process of the development of the guidance document, we were not able to come up with a universally agreed definition of many terms, but we decided instead to rely on the very good definitions that are already done in many documents. For example, you see the site management and site remediation, and it is quite difficult to define what management is, but we see a good definition in many of the guidance documents that are already out there. The next slide links to such useful guidance that were made nationally or internationally or by the various organizations. So this technical information will be helpful in addressing the challenges of contaminated sites. The next slide is the last one for my presentation, and this is a list of case studies that were provided from France, Canada, and Switzerland in the process of the development guidance. I'm not going to go into details on these case studies, but I invite Rocío to speak about the very good example of Almaden. Rocío, gracias.
Hey everyone. Buenas tardes from Spain. Well, I work at CIEMAT. It's a research center on energy, environment, and technology. Next one, please. that and in the at CIEMAT I work in the Department of the Environment, and I am the head of the Soil and Environmental Geology Research Division, and also I am the head again of the Soil Conservation and Recuperation Research Unit. In this research unit, we have several research lines, and one of them is the characterization, rehabilitation, and monitoring of contaminated sites. That is the interest of the talk of today. Next one, please. Well, in this research area, we have some experience, very pretty good experience, working in gold mines, also in mercury mines and other metallic mines. Not only uranium mine, we have experience in the lead, copper, nickel, and iron mines in Spain and in other countries. And regarding mercury mines, it's well known, Almaden case, because it's the biggest and the oldest mercury mine, but we have another mercury mines in Spain in the northern part of Spain. Well, I want to stress that because the rehabilitation methodologies, the characterization of the site, and so on are very different in both of them, even if they are in the same country. Because Almaden is in central south of Spain in an arid area, and also with a Mediterranean vegetation. And Asturias is in the northern part of Spain, close to the sea, and also with very different climatology conditions and very different vegetation and so on. And we have to work in both of them. Well, next one, please. Also, we have experience working in brownfield industrial areas, fuel plants, and so on. I would like to show you this slide because this is a fuel plant. And in this area, we have 3 hectares, but we have to apply 3 different techniques. We apply chemical and biological basic technique for the contamination, and we have to combine all of them in this specific site. And it's normal that when you are working in a contaminated site, you have a mosaic of situation inside it, and you have to take into account all of them. It's impossible to apply one remedial action, and that's all. No, that's the ideal situation, but it's not the reality. Next one, please. Well, in this way, we have to apply when we are working in Spain. We have to apply, and we have to take into consideration the Spanish legislation, water and air quality legislation and normative, but also the Spanish legislation for soil, contaminated soil and waste. Well, in this case, we have to establish the geochemical background of the area we are working in, also to calculate the reference levels and the level of intervention. Well, in Spain, each autonomous region established this reference level as well as the level of intervention due to this related with the geochemical background of each area. And also, the reference levels include that reference level that must be applied after the contamination regarding the land use, regarding the future land use. Well, next one, please. We have to take into account all of this. Furthermore, the exploitation project now have to integrate the rehabilitation and recuperation plans. It's very important because if you include that, you prevent the future problems after the close down of the activity. Well, in this way, we have to establish a conceptual model for each site, contaminated site. This is according with the guidance of the management of contaminated site that you see before in the Eisaku Toda presentation. Next one, please. But we have to establish the conceptual model, but we have to planning at the contamination project, specific for each area. You have to know as much as possible the site that you are going to work with. That means you have to have historical data, population, you have to know, including the diet, the product they consume, and also to know all about the if there is a protected area close to this contaminated site or not, everything about your area. Also, you have to perform some sampling analysis previous to starting to planning the decontamination, the real decontamination project. Well, in this way, you can make a hierarchy of alternative for the contamination and to evaluate each one and to know if they are going to be also accepted by the community. Sometimes it's very difficult because you propose some remedial action, but people sometimes doesn't accept it, and you have to take that in consideration. And then you're starting with your remedial plan, your action plan that imply to apply this remedial action and also the mid and long-term monitoring of the area. Well, next one, please. And now we are going to talk about Almaden. Almaden is located 300 kilometers far from Madrid. Is very well known. Next one, please, because it's the oldest and biggest mercury mine. And 1/3 of the total mercury consumed in our history in the world came from this mine. Well, in 1997, the open pit was closed down. And in 1999, the closure process of the whole mine started. At this point, the people from the Ministry of Industry, as well as people from the Ministry of the Environment in Spain, came to CIEMAT together with the owner of the mine to say, well, we need a research center to help us to planning the closure procedure. How can we remediate the contaminated site? How can establish what is contaminated or what is natural, the background of the area? And also we need help for establish a monitoring process after the mine closed down, because this monitoring process in this mercury mine is take 50 years minimum. Okay. Well, next one. In this context, we saw that this area was a depressed area where the employment rate increased a lot, with population decreased because they moved to another areas after the mine closed down. They look for work in another areas, and also we have to face up in a landscape with problems. Because the mine have a lot of mine dams and tailings everywhere, and we have to try to recover the natural landscape, to perform some environmental restoration in this area. Next one, please. In this way, we are starting to look all the cartography we can find, and starting to study the geology, hydrology, the physical geography, soils, plant, vegetation, and so on that are in the area. And something that is very specific of this area is in the climatic condition that during the summer they can reach temperature over 45 degrees. Close to the soil, you can reach close to 50 degrees. That means that if you have soluble or you have available mercury, can be volatilized in a natural way. And that's something that we have to keep in mind. Next one, please. Also, we study the direction of the winds. Also, we study the relief and the drainage network. In this area, we have two main rivers. The Valdeazogue River cross all the valley that conform the Mercury mine district, but the other river, the Alcudia River in the south, cross an area that only you can find forests and farm and cultivars. But both of them confluence the water, and also there is another ephemeral stream that are the tributary of this river that came from the mine. We have to study all this system in a whole. Next one, please. Well, for that, at CIEMAT, we started to work at several research levels, laboratory, greenhouse, lysimeters, field plot, and using remote sensing to study a regional scale, the temporal and spatial changes along several years. Next one, please. Well, in this situation, we have to look at this as one whole with all these components, economy, society, and environment together, because it's impossible to separate it in a contaminated site. And all of them have their own weight when you are establish a conceptual model. Well, also we have to planning, environmental restoration, alternative for population, and then to establish a monitoring plan. Well, we have to select which technique is available. If we have trained qualified personnel to work in this area, and so like technique, we apply at Almaden barriers, bioremediation, phytotechnology, soil amendment, soil washing. Also, we apply thermal desorption using infrared lamps, but also using solar energy. That is very interesting. Well, and then we establish this monitoring and control plan in the mid and long term. And also we recommended other strategies. Next one, please. Well, at the beginning, we found this landscape. And then we say that, well, we have to work in the mine dump, in mine tiling, but also we have to work in the surrounding. Next one, please. That the first task we performed there was the recuperation of the mine tiling. That means the slope correction, drainage system, to revegetate and phytostabilize the mine tilings, and to establish the monitoring points. Well, as a result of this, it was reduced 19% of the mercury in air and particles. Before this mine tiling rehabilitation, you can find close to the mine and in the villas, because the villas is close to this Almaden mine. You can find more than 3,000, 4,000 nanogram per cubic meter during the summer, but after the rehabilitation of the mine slope, of the mine tiling and dams, the concentration of mercury in air is less than 100 nanogram per square meter. That means that it was very important for the population that live around the mine. Also, we recover the visual impact was improved because you can see vegetation, you can see something green, you cannot see the residues, the waste, and they have a very high social impact, and they accepted that. and they are very grateful for this work. Next one, please. Also, this is one of the oldest mines in the world. That means that for us it's very important to protect the industrial and cultural heritage. In this way, we select the infrastructure to be preserved and selected those to be demolished or removed. And then in this area now they are museum, they are mining park, and you can visit, and now is included in the list of the World Heritage. That is very important also, because it's something that the cultural heritage must be protected also, and is part of our history. Next one, please. And also in this, the miners that they lost their job, they are working now. And they show you the mine, so the museum, and so on, and they have a new work, and that's nice. Well, also we work in the Mediterranean oak forest. Part of this forest is protected. We work also in agricultural areas. Next one, please. And also we selected some areas that are typical of this Mercury mine district and can serve as an experimental field plot and can be represented of other areas around the mine. Then we have to include the river banks, we have to include other Mercury sites and so on. Next one, please. As I showed you before, we have several control points and sampling points along the river that cross the mining district. As you can see, there is a lot of mine sites along the river, and also we have to control the influence when the tributary came to the main river and joined the water, and then what happened with the water quality before and after the confluence of the rivers. That's very important. Next one, please. Also, we are starting to work in Huerta del Rey in Almaden. Huerta del Rey is very close to the mine, was the first entrance to the mine in the last centuries. And also we work in Almadenejos, that is a little village close to Almaden, but was very important because there was some smeltering area there, and we have to some mercury storage also there, and we have control points in both of them, and both of them are contaminated sites. And we know that because we have to calculate the Almaden reference levels, and both of them have soil with mercury concentration up to 500, 600 milligram per kilogram. That means that needs remediation. Okay? In this way, we can select where is contaminated, where is not contaminated, and which area required more information. Next one, please. Well, also we have to study what happened in the soil and also in the soil plant system, because we have to know in the crops what the amount of mercury that can reach the edible part, and also people consume wild plants like asparagus or mushroom or berries, and that is included in their diet. People regarding always the aquatic food chain, but in these areas and in a lot of mine areas that people live there, they cultivate their own food. That means that is another way to intake mercury. Next one, please. In this way, we have to develop a methodological procedure for soil samples. Next one. For establish how the amount of mercury that are available or are binding in the mineral form, and is it mobile or no form of mercury, and also the speciation of mercury. Next one. Also, we have to develop new methodological procedure for vegetation samples. Because if you have to study forest, you have to cut some branches of the trees, but you must be sure that all the branches have the same age and then the same accumulation time, and so on. Next one, please. Also, we found that in Almaden there is a new ecotype, and most of them are hyperaccumulators of mercury. That means we found some plant species with more than 40-50 milligrams per kilogram of mercury in the aerial plant that can be used like phytostructures. And also some of these plants have traditional medicinal uses, and we have to inform the population that don't use this plant for medical purposes. Next one. Also, we have the riparian vegetation. In the riparian vegetation, we found that it's very important to protect this vegetation because they absorb inorganic mercury and then reduce the entrance of this mercury in the river. That means that reduce the potential methylation in the river because they absorb high quantities of inorganic mercury. Also, they protect the river banks. That means that protect against erosion. That means that protect against the entrance of soil, contaminated soil to the rivers. And also it can be used like phytobarriers. Well, next one, please. In the agricultural area, this is the ESA. The Castilcera is an area that belongs to the mine, and is 9,000 hectares to be managed. And this is an open forest, a Mediterranean open forest, that is combining the forestry with the agricultural uses. Next one, please. Then that we have is to extract this lysimeter, that is an undisturbed soil monolith. For that, we select the worst case. That means the agricultural soil with most available mercury. In this way, if we protect the soil, we protect all the soil, the agricultural soil. In this, we started to cultivate the most common and the most profitable crops for this area, and also to starting to research on industrial crop, traditional medicinal plant, how it could be affected fertilization and so on. Next one, please. And in this way, we are starting to work with eggplant. This eggplant is very important in this area because it's protected by designation of origin and is very expensive. They consume like side dish, but it's very appreciated in all Spain, in the whole Spain. And they can cultivate it without problem. Next one. Common beds is not, we can use the seed for feeding birds, but it's not possible to use it like a fodder for feeding animals because we found that sometimes it's about the permissible levels. In this way, we don't recommend it to use these common beds, and we say the same with the alfalfa. Next one, please. Each of these data need minimum 3 or 5 years of cultivate. That means that is very, when we recommend it or not crop is because we are sure that we can do it. Well, lupin can be consumed the seed by for animal feed, but also for human consumption, and it's possible to do that, but not to use the whole plant for feeding animals. Next one, please. Lentils like chickpea are very appreciated in this area and is a typical area for cultivate this crop. And in this case, I want to show how I put this slide, because if you say to a farmer that their crop have 6 micrograms per kilogram of mercury, they are going to say, what? And then you say, well, that means that you can cultivate because it's not contaminated your crop. If you need to eat 26 diseases per day to be toxic for you, and they say, okay, I understand. Then it's very important to communicate to the population, to the legislator, to the academia, this data. Well, with barley in the same, we cultivate barley because it's very appreciated in this area for elaborate beer. And then we make all the process and we say, well, if you consume the beer you produce with your barley from Almaden, you can drink more than 10 liters per day without risk of mercury contamination. The problem, I think, is your liver or other problem, not the mercury in this case. Well, next one. Also, we study the food processing of all the products because it's not the same, the mercury content in the product and when you are cooking or you process the food. And also, we have made experimental work about when you, after ingestion, which fraction is really absorbed by the body and which fraction is excretable. Next one, please. Also, we propose lavender because lavender is typical of this area, grows naturally in this area, and has a very high value, economical value, and is another socioeconomical alternative in this area. Next one, please. Also, for the monitoring, we are using remote sensing. In this slide, you can see red color that it was the open pit, and when they starting to be filling with water, you can see how it's turning in a blue color. That means that we have time series and also spatial series that we can compare the evolution of the area. Next one, please. And for us, it's very important, very, very important, dissemination, divulgation, formation, to exchange information, to accept in our group researching and studying for other areas. And as you can see in the upper part of the slide, when we make a course about contaminated sites of mercury, we go to Almaden and we have practice. People have to take samples and see how to do it. Well, also it's very important to elaborate reports, publication, to participate in international forum, because it's the only way to advance. And finally, next one, as a final idea, when you are working in a contaminated site, you have to take into account society and environment. You cannot separate them. And in a contaminated site, you have to take it into account the economical input as well as all the information about the site characterization for a better planning of environmental restoration, and then to planning a very good monitoring. If you perform a good site characterization, you save money because you are going to work only in this area that are really contaminated. And you can select the better technologies in that. And also, if there is a population implied, you have to give them alternative socioeconomical alternative. And finally, don't forget dissemination, information, and training, and to help people and to communicate to people and to imply all the stakeholders as you can. The last one is to say all of you, thank you for your attention. Gracias por vuestra atención.
Thank you so very much, Rocío. You undoubtedly are an excellent communicator and ambassador for this very complex topic and this complex work with multiple stages. So we want to thank you very much for sharing and for giving us the breadth of information that you have. We usually have a little bit of time more for questions and answers, but I've seen a good activity in the Q&A box, and Eisaku and others, Richard, I see others as well, giving some good replies there. So that is very nice to see. There is one question which I might just want to put to Eisaku as we're concluding the session now, which was that a question came forward about the guidance and about that in most of the ASGM contaminated sites, they are actually located in tropical regions and often in the southern hemisphere. We heard of climatic conditions and so on, of course, as major impact factors, right? But the question is, in these kind of tropical regions, the mercury cycle in the aquatic systems is quite complex. And so the person is asking, do we think that managing or remediating such mercury contaminated sediments should be addressed in a separate guidance? May I just give that to Eisaku and Rocío, perhaps just to make some concluding comments on that, mindful, of course, that we are trying to close on time, but this is an important topic to bring to forward, given especially that ASGM is our largest emission source. Over to either of you.
Thank you, Claudia. So if I may respond also to Svetlana's question about the pathway from the aquatic to the fish contamination and the food intake, I think I leave it to the experts' opinion whether we need to revise the guidance, but it is I think it is very important to collect very good case studies and what conceptual models were established and how these contamination, including the sediment and aquatic system contamination was addressed. So we look forward to receiving good case studies that we can share on the website. So this is from me, and I turn to Rocío for any concluding remark.
Yes, because in some areas, like sometimes in artisanal gold, small gold mines, the river is the most contaminated area, and in this case is your case study. But in areas like Almaden or other contaminated areas, chlor-alkali plants or other areas, the aquatic system is inside the contaminated area and as you can see, it's very difficult to separate the terrestrial system from the aquatic system, because in most of the case they have influence between them and they have a transfer between them. If you want to separate terrestrial system from the atmosphere, it's difficult. Sometimes in your area is the most contaminated area site is your river or your dam or your lake, and then, well, you can separate it because it's the contaminated site. But it's very difficult when you have a contaminated site. All are connected, and you have to have a holistic view of the site.
Well, with that, it is a complex matter. It's an important matter, and it's a long-term matter for countries to look at, to deal with, and to conceptualize fully in terms of how to move forward and how to include the societies that are affected and are part of this, and also how to think about the future societies that are still going to be living in similar areas or the same areas, and so on and so forth. So it's really one of the articles where the socioeconomic dimensions of the work and the sustainability aspects of all of this really come forward. I just want to really thank both of our speakers, Eisaku, for making the guidance, which are deep and big, but you made it clear and you brought it out easily. Rocío, just for giving us this amazing tour into many different aspects of it. We look forward to many more case studies and other information coming forward. And just to say that if a question comes to mind that is still coming to mind afterwards, also please feel free to reach out to us, and we shall be trying to answer that question or to put you to information or indeed in touch with Rocío to ask more. And all that remains for me to do is to thank you for your time and thank you for your continued interest in all of our work. And we hope you are well. And we would like to invite you to the last session of Minamata Online happening next week. And then wish you, of course, good wishes for the year and hope that you will join us for Minamata session season 2 next year. But before that, let me just say that at the end, when you log off, there is a Q&A, or there's a little question box. If you have any comments on what you would like to see next time around, what you'd like to see done better or more of or less of, we'd be very, very happy to have your feedback so we can design the next season with your needs in mind. With that, thank you very much and stay well. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Adiós a todos.